Hey there, I wanted to take a brief moment and welcome you to the Focus Point podcast. If this is one of the first episodes that you're hearing from us, please head over to our website, thepointoffocus.com, where you can find out some more information about who we are, what we're doing. You can also find other podcast episodes and blog posts there as well. That's thepointoffocus.com. I'm so glad that you decided to give one of our episodes a listen. I really hope that you will be blessed and encouraged through what you hear in this episode. I also encourage you to share this episode with your family and your friends. Once again, I just thank you for taking some time and listening to our episode. Now, let's dive in to today's episode. Oh, I am excited to look at this emotion today. If you were with us last week, or if you've listened to our other episodes in this series, we are currently in our At the Movies series that we're calling Inside Out this year. And this is episode 5 of that series. And so, but if you've listened to the previous 4, or even if you're just catching on to us right now, I mentioned last week that we're talking about envy today, jealousy or pride, however you want to put that in place. And so, if you want to grab a copy of the Bible and open it on up to Isaiah chapter 14, and we're going to be in verses 12 through 15, maybe a couple other ones, but that's the main thing that we're going to look at in a little bit. And we're going to be looking at a story that isn't widely taught, I guess, would be the way to put it. Not that it's just one of those stories that isn't told as like a story, and it happened before, like, the Genesis, right? It happened before, in the beginning, right? This is like the before the in the beginning kind of story, and it involves Satan and God. And so as we're going to look at this story, as I said at the beginning of this series, we've kind of gone in and out of it. It wasn't as God has kind of directed this series. It wasn't as needed or as drawn through as I originally planned or thought it would be. But let's look at this Proverbs verse. Proverbs 14, verse 30. It says, "A peaceful heart leads to a healthy body, but envy rots the bones." Envy rots the bones. In the NLT version, it says jealousy is like cancer to the bones. And we know that the Bible also talks about pride going before destruction. And so this is one of those stories that kind of seeps into the rest of the story of how God had this special place that he had, and then this event takes place. And we're going to kind of reference it again. We referenced it a couple weeks ago. But as we kind of unpack this a little bit, we're kind of going to have just a little bit of discussion about this story and kind of see where envy and jealousy and pride and all of that can take us. You see, the thing is with this, and I said it last week, is that sometimes these emotions that entered into the world at the event of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and all of a sudden fear and shame and anger and anxiety and envy and boredom and all of these things kind of came in to play because of that one event. And the situation, though, is, I said last week as we were kind of ending our talk on boredom, that sometimes in our boredom that we shouldn't, in our boredom we shouldn't sin. That's what was kind of the key point of last week, is that that in our boredom is not the place that we should sin. We shouldn't do what we're not supposed to do because we're bored, right? And we looked at King David and how he wasn't where he was supposed to be, and he maybe was a little bit bored. He was taking a nap, and he was getting up, and he was just kind of wandering around, pacing, however you want to describe that. He was bored. and it led to him sleeping with another man's wife, and then killing her husband because he wouldn't he wouldn't do what he wanted him to do to pass off the pregnancy that happened because of this affair, and and it just turned into a big, humongous mess. And we talked about how boredom itself isn't the problem, it's what we do when we're bored. And so this is a different kind of thing. And I said last week that it's in our boredom, it can lead to this topic of envy. Because when we're bored, maybe we're not doing what we should be doing, or maybe there's other things that we could be doing. And I listed some things that we could do, like we could clean the house, organize some stuff, do a project, read the Bible, read a book, spend time with friends, text back and forth with some friends, maybe play some games, spend time with the kids, memorize scripture, just read, like I said, read the Bible, pray, whatever it is. Right? And it's in these spaces of boredom that if we're not careful, we can fall into envy. Because if we get bored and we start to do other things, then we kind of lean into maybe social media sometimes. And then we start looking at all these things, and we start seeing all of these family pictures of these families that we wish we could be like. And we start falling into what I've kind of referred to, maybe other people have too. I'm not saying I own this, but like the grass is always greener syndrome, right? Wind up in that comparison, and we get in there and we're like, oh, they look at them, they just have it all together. I mean, I can't get my kids to just behave on a 5-minute car ride, and look at their nice furniture and that nice house that they live in, and they're always going on the most awesome vacations. Look at these pictures that they take and all of this kind of stuff, and look at the job that they just got. But what we don't see is the 67,000 pictures that were taken of people of the kids not acting right in that beautiful family portrait that we only see one picture of, right? We don't see the outtakes. We don't see like I said, millions of other pictures that were taken, the fighting and the yelling and the screaming and the crying. We don't see the moments of their picture perfect vacations. We don't see that that part of, we see that part of it, but we don't see how they got on each other's nerves, and how, one kid almost drowned another kid in the pool, or how they're constantly arguing and yelling, and the car ride down there was just all of this stuff. We don't see all of that. We don't see how we see the image of the house and all the perfect things that are there, but we don't see the time frames where the house is a mess and there's stains on the furniture, and we don't know the fact that they're living paycheck to paycheck in this, and that they got their promotion that we're envious and jealous of, and I wish I could just get that next step. I wish I could just get that chance. But we don't see the fact that they did that, and they don't really like the fact that they did, because they spend less time with their family, but because they needed the money to afford some of the lifestyle that they have that maybe they shouldn't have to begin with. And that's what happens in our boredom. And we just get envy, and we just wish that we had it some other kind of way. Right? We see, oh, well, look at them. They're always there for their kids. They're at every single thing that their kid does. But I have to miss it because I have to work. But we don't know the stories behind why they're not working, or why they're able to be there, or maybe this is the first time they've been there in a while. And we get into this comparison trap, and then we wind up getting jealous and envious and prideful. And that's where our story with this whole idea of Satan, like I said, this story is found kind of sporadically throughout the Bible. I will list these in the description of the episode, but the point is that this story happened, and it bleeds into another story. And when we see that God has created things, and the first thing He's created, right, is the angels. And they watched Him create the rest of the world, and they sing praises to Him, and they give glory to God for that. And then the most beautiful angel that was created, his name is Lucifer. And there's discrepancies on if that was just a title or if it was his name, and that's just stuff I don't get into. Lucifer is how he's referenced. And he got, and the Bible tells us that he got jealous in his heart because the angels were praising God and not him, and he wanted some of that praise. He wanted to be that. And so he started to think, hey, I will do something different. I will make my throne at or above God, and so the praise and the honor and the glory will come to me. And this is what we see in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. It says, "How you are fallen from heaven, O shining star, Lucifer, son of the morning. You have been thrown down to the earth, you who destroyed the nations of the world. For you said to yourself, I will ascend to heaven and set my throne above God's stars. I will preside on the mountain of the gods far away in the north. I will climb to the highest heavens and be like the Most High. Instead, you will be brought down. Instead, you will be brought down to the place of the dead, down to its lowest depths. Everyone there will stare at you and ask, can this be the one who shook the earth and made the kingdoms of the world tremble? Is this the one who destroyed the world and made it into a wasteland? Is this the king who demolished the world's greatest cities and had no mercy on its prisoners?" Now, this is a dual thing, and this is where we're kind of going to get into a little bit of discussion about it. This is a dual thing. This is talking about the king of Babylon. It's kind of like this prophecy for the king of Babylon, but it's also referring to this idea of Lucifer, right? He's putting Lucifer in this, and he's using this as a reference point. And so in this, he's speaking both about this current thing and this future thing. So he's talking about the earthly king of Babylon, and he's also talking about the spiritual Babylon, which is now Satan. And so we see that Satan fell from a glorified and honored place. We find that reference in Ezekiel 28. And this is what Jesus is speaking of in Luke 10:18 when he says that he saw Satan fall like lightning. That is consistent with Jesus saying in the Gospel of John that he was with God at the beginning, right? He was there. He sees this thing happen. And Satan wouldn't have access to heaven. He was restricted to earth. Satan would fall from his place to earth, right, into this bottomless pit, right? Not hell yet, because that is later on where he gets out of the bottomless pit, and then he will go into the lake of fire, which is referenced as hell in Revelation. We see this here in Isaiah that we just read. And so we keep going through this passage, and we see that this thing is Satan having these, actually Lucifer at the time, having these I will kind of statements, right? The pride, the selfish ambition, right, is what Satan is doing, this jealousy that we get, right? And then we experience it too, right? We want to be like that person. We want to be like, so we change our whole idea. We change our whole position. Maybe that changes us for the worst of things, right? Because sometimes we're always being after somebody that we shouldn't want to be like. I mean, we fix ourselves up so we can be like that person, or we change the way we do business, and we compromise some of our own beliefs or our own positions on things, right? We talked about it in this idea of humility and pride. We talked about it in our Philippians series, especially over Holy Week when we looked at Philippians 2. And this idea of selfish ambition and only going after ourselves, right? That is what is described here by Lucifer. I will ascend to heaven. I will be in this place of honor. I will exalt my throne above the stars. meaning I will be enthroned and will be exalted all over all the other angelic beings, maybe even more than God, right? I will also sit on the mountain that we read about. I will ascend above the heights. I will continue to rise until everybody sees my glory. I will be like the Most High. I will be glorious and set equal to God, far above all other created beings. This is where this kind of gets discrepancy. Some of the studying that I've done and the notes that I've taken from that. I think Lucifer wanted to be better than God in this moment. It's not clear, and kind of getting here where it says, I will be like the Most High, right? But I think his goal was more lofty than that. I think he wanted to be better than God. I think he wanted to be God. He wanted to be equal to God. It's clear. But I think there was part of him that wanted to be more like God. But it is also clear in this that his moment here was to be better than even his peers, right? The other angels is what he was really describing here. And we know what that's like. I just mentioned it. We want to be better than we want that popularity. We want that attention, right? Satan, like I said, he necessarily wanted to be above God, but part of me thinks that he did want to be above God. He wants to be better than God. But he wanted to be at least equal. And this is just this strange idea, right? So if this is the case, and now Lucifer is kind of rejecting the way things are, right? God is above everything. God is above everybody. And the angels are created. That's the key thing here. And the only person that existed in the beginning was God. And now you've got this created being that wants to be better than God. And does that sound familiar? If you're familiar with the first 11 chapters of the Bible, there's a lot of trying to be like God in here. But this explains Satan's strategy against us. Right? We're created in the image of God. And he's encouraging the sin and the rebellion, right? To get people to go with him, just like he convinced these angels to go with him. He convinced 1/3 of the angels to go with him, to be to glorify him instead of God. And that's all he wants for us, because as I mentioned, familiar story we looked at a couple weeks ago, Genesis chapter 3, if you want to go there with me. And it says, now the serpent was the shrewdest of all the wild animals the Lord God had made. One day he asked the woman, did God really say you must not eat from the fruit of the tree, from any tree in the garden? Of course we may eat the fruit from the trees in the garden, the woman replied. It is only the fruit from the tree in the middle of the garden that we are not allowed to eat. God said, you must not eat it or touch it, or you will die. You won't die, the serpent replied. God knows that when you eat it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. And the woman was convinced. She saw that the tree was beautiful and its fruit looked delicious, and she wanted the wisdom it would give her. Right? There you go. She was envious or maybe jealous of something that could be there that God might have been keeping. And then Satan plants this seed. If we read what's happening here, right? It's not just a choice of words. You will be like God. You will know things. There's stuff that God is hiding from you. And she convinced the woman to do this, right? And she took the fruit and she ate it. And also, too, not only that, it would give her wisdom, right? It would give her something that she didn't have. And she ate it, and she gave it to her husband who was with her, and he ate it too. And at that moment, their eyes were open. And here it is. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. They suddenly felt shame at their nakedness. And then later on, it comes down here, verse 10, and it says, I was afraid because I was naked. So there we can see fear, and now probably anxiety, right? They have to hide. Oh, is he going to find us? Fear and shame and anxiety and pride and all of this stuff has entered into the world. And it all comes from the point. And I didn't realize this. There's a piece of there's a period of time at my local church that I volunteer at, that we spend going through these stories with our kids. And in this time is when I realized, probably for the first time, maybe 6-7 years ago, that Lucifer, who wanted to be like God, right, gets cast down to earth. Now Satan tempts. The very first temptation, the very first thing that he says is, hey, you eat this, you can be like God. Starting a failure before they even knew it. It was going to fail. He tempted them with something that he knew wasn't going to work. Isn't that wild to think about it? And that, as I said, pride goes before destruction. And this prideful moment that they had in this story, right? Proverbs 16:18, pride goes before destruction. And the whole thing is Satan knew it wasn't going to work. And then it leads to this Tower of Babel story. Genesis chapter 11. And it says, verse 4, Genesis chapter 11, verse 4, and it says, "Come, let us build a great city for ourselves, with a tower that reaches into the sky, that will make us famous and keep us from being scattered all over the world." And this is pride right there. Let us build this tower to honor ourselves, so we can make a name for ourselves, some translations say. And it's almost kind of like, then God can't do this, right? We will make a name. It will be about us. Look at the thing that we did. Look at this pride and this envy, right? That is there. This envy that was there in Eve's heart. And that's the situation that comes. It was a heart thing. It's always a heart thing. It's what's in our hearts. We talked about that. Luke 6:45 says, in some, I'm paraphrasing here, but it says, what's in the heart comes out. And it was a heart thing for Lucifer. It's a heart thing for us. And we talked about that in our Philippians series as well. And it says here, "For you have said in your heart," right? God tells us the reason behind the fall of the king of Babylon and Lucifer. "You have said in your heart that I am going to be better than anybody else." And that's where it starts, in our heart. Jeremiah tells us that the heart is desperately wicked, desperately sick. Jeremiah 17:9. And when we hear these things, we're like, no, it's just not. But that's where it starts. Luke 6:45, as I said, Jesus telling us that in our hearts is where things start, right? The love of money, it's all in our heart. The love of being ourselves, and what we say, and what we do, and how we act. And it says here, a good person produces good things from the treasury of the heart. So a treasury of a good heart. An evil person produces evil things from the treasury of an evil heart. What you say flows from your heart. It flows from what is in your heart. Which, when we see in Proverbs 4:23, one of my things that I've taught the kids at my church before, Proverbs 4:23, "Guard your heart above all else." Other translations switch that and they say, "Above all else, guard your heart. For everything you do flows from it. For it determines your course of life." Above all else, guard your heart. It's where things start. And if we let pride and envy and jealousy and anger and rage and slander and all those things that we mentioned in the very first week in Ephesians 4, we let that stuff in, right? But if we let love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness at our heart, things go a little bit different for us. And it also says, look straight ahead and fix your eyes on what lies before you. Mark out a straight path for your feet and stay on the safe path. Don't get sidetracked. Keep your feet from following evil. That was unplanned. I just happened to look here at the scripture and I saw the rest of I saw the rest of Proverbs 4. And it says to me that is what God is telling us, right? Stay on the path. Look straight ahead. Don't look over here. Oh, look at that! Look at the house. Look at this, or look how they act, and look what they do. Look at the way they talk. Look at the way they dress, and all of these different things that come into our minds. Because Satan was like, look at the way they're acting toward God. I want some of that. I want some of that popularity. I want some of that attention, right? And envy starts to stir up. I've been there. I've been there. Where you look and you see, man, I wish I had that. Maybe you're joking when you say it, but deep down inside, is it really a joke? Or do you really wish I had that? I wish I had that car. I wish I had that new, the newest, video game system. I wish I had, her hair. Or I wish I had that house. Or I wish I had that job, that position, that thing. I wish I had that much money. I wish we could have that kind of money so we could just go wherever we want, whenever we want. We don't see the reality of some of those things. We don't see the reason behind why maybe they're trying to perfect their hair. Maybe it's deep down inside. It's a war of self-confidence. It's a war of the self-esteem inside, trying to be like everybody else, trying to fit in. So they primp and they prop and they do their thing and they try to make themselves look so they can fit in, or so they can be accepted, or so they can get that. Maybe it is so they can get that, oh, look at you, oh, that prideful kind of stuff. We don't see the fact that they save up money all the time, and sometimes they go without just so they can take their family on a nice vacation. Or we don't see the amount of work and effort they've put in to being able to earn a nice vehicle, or that position, or whatever it is. And I think about these stories that we've talked about, and I see this idea of just this more, right? This pride. Maybe Adam and Eve, I said it a couple weeks ago, that maybe they were bored with the way things were going. And they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to handle it. And so they kind of were easing their way over into maybe parts of the garden they didn't go to. But I will say that the Garden of Eden, to me, represents heaven in this particular part of the Bible, in this particular story. It's not heaven, but it represents what the earth was supposed to be like. It represents what heaven is going to be like. They didn't have any pain. They didn't have any sorrow. They didn't have any reason to be afraid or envious or prideful or scared or any of these things. They didn't have any reason for that. And that's the way in Revelation 21 it describes heaven to be. There's going to be no more pain. There's going to be no more sorrow. There's going to be no more tears. There's going to be none of that. No more darkness. None of that, right? Well, if that's in the garden, then that picture that, even though it's not, it's this parallel kind of like, this is what heaven's supposed to be. And just like Lucifer got kicked out of heaven, and then just like Adam and Eve got kicked out of the garden, there's more to it, obviously. But like sometimes I think we get distracted. It's kind of like, oh no, that's not really, like, this is the way I see it. And I think this is the way God wants us to see it, is that they got kicked out of a place. And just like when we fall into these different things, we're putting this space between us and God, this rebellion, this sin, right? Lucifer is the technical first sinner. He rebelled against what God wanted for him. He rebelled against what God had for him. And we see it in all of these I will statements. I will do this. I will be better. I will. And that causes us to become people that we aren't, or that God didn't create us to be. And sometimes we don't see the whole story. And we read verses 16 and 17 as well, and I want to bring those back in as we kind of are closing out here. It talks about the end of things, right? And sometimes what envy gets us, right? Let's picture this just a little bit, okay? God says that he created the heavens and the earth, and then he creates the earth, and then he says, let us make mankind. Okay, for me, I always thought that let's create mankind. Okay, well, he created Adam and Eve. That means there was no other people on the planet at the time. Okay, but there was, because he says he created mankind. Then Genesis 2 takes it and it zeroes in on how God created mankind. He just uses Adam and Eve as his example, right? And that kind of was revealed to me that, okay, so there's other people on the planet, right? Because you kind of get into a touchy little subject. It's kind of like, okay, so if Adam and Eve were the only ones and they had their kids, okay, well, how did they have kids and where did their wives come from, right? So there was other people outside of the garden that God had created. And so when you look and you see these things, though, I wonder if those people might have known, hey, you were in the garden, right? And as we see Isaiah, I want to go back to it. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my electronic Bible here. In Isaiah 14:16, it says, everyone will stare at you and ask, can this be the one who shook the earth and made the kingdoms tremble? Are you the one, right? You ever get that feeling that Adam and Eve, just like Lucifer, kind of like, you're the one that fell from heaven. You're the one that I saw, like Jesus when he said, he fell like lightning, right? And then you've got Adam and Eve, and maybe they got out of the garden. It's kind of like, weren't you guys the one that was in the garden? Weren't you these people weren't you this high king at one point, as is referencing in our passage here? And you just wrap your head around that. And when you think about when we get to a certain point and we do it out of our, and then we get there and we wind up falling down, right? Pride goes before destruction. And we wind up getting to where and then all of a sudden people are like, didn't you used to have all this? Didn't you used to, and I think of the story of Job and how he had lots of stuff. And then Satan does what he does. And Satan asks God, he's like, hey, I bet you Job will turn on you if you take his stuff away. I bet you Job will turn on you if you take his family away. I bet you Job will turn on you if you take everything away from him. And he bet you take his health away from him. And he doesn't. But see, the thing is that's true for us too, because if we get all that stuff out of envy and pride, and we worked and we changed ourselves, and then all of a sudden it kind of goes up in a puff of smoke, and then we turn around and we're not where we used to be, and we turn around and we point our finger at God, maybe. What happened? I thought you were with me. I thought this is what you wanted. I thought this is what it was supposed to be. And we wind up being in this comment here, where I think Isaiah 14:16, everyone will stare at you and ask, can this be the one who shook the earth? Can this be the one who was the CEO? Can this be the one who had this nice shiny house and now he doesn't have it? What happened to his Corvette? What happened to her nice hair? What happened to her personality? Why did she change so much? And the thing of it is in the movie Inside Out, that's what's driven a lot of the movie. She goes away to a hockey camp, and she finds out that her friends, right, who she's herself with her friends, but we all experience this when a friend moves away, or they go to a different high school, and all of a sudden now she's got to fit into another group, or this group and all of these different kinds of things. And in the movie, she changes her whole idea, changes her whole image, changes her whole personality, changes herself in order to try and fit in. But there's one thing that spears this on, and we're going to talk about it next week. And I'm excited to dive into it. There's one thing that spears it on. That's why it's last. And that's anxiety. Anxiety, the Inside Out 2, the movie centers around anxiety. And it dawned on me that a lot of this stuff, a lot of these actions that we might have, a lot of these fears and all of this stuff, all of these other emotions, anxiety is the start. So we're going to talk about it next week. I'm excited to share with it. I'm excited to be a part of it. And it's a new territory for me, and I'll explain that a little bit next week. But I hope that you'll come back. I hope that you'll join us again. And I hope that you will be able to kind of see where maybe you're a little bit envious, maybe you're a little bit prideful. We did that the very first week, right? We took a moment and we went, and I said, do an evaluation, right? Evaluate your stuff. See what makes you angry. See where you get angry. See the moments that you're angry and what causes it, okay? Well, think about the pride and envy. Where are you most prideful? What do you want that someone else has? Where are we not content, right, with what we have? One of our key verses in this series is in Philippians 4, and it's Philippians 4:12, and it says, "I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content, and then I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." Where are we not content? Where are we trying to be envy? Where are we jealous? Where is that at? Do a self-evaluation. That's the exercise of this week. To evaluate this kind of stuff. You can do it with anger. You can do it with boredom. Where do you get bored? What causes your boredom? What causes you to be embarrassed or shameful or guilty feeling for what you've done? Where is fear? And all of that. And do an evaluation with that. And come back with us next week as we continue one more talk about anxiety. And I'm excited the last couple episodes because we're going to close out with joy. And there's a reason for that. And so I've just loved the way that God kind of spelled out this series and how it's all kind of combining on each other and all of that, and how they all lead and they all connect. It's really exciting. So I hope this encouraged you, and I hope it blessed you. And I hope you'll join us next week as we talk about anxiety. See you there.